So I've played about 50 games on update 4.4, and I think it's time to give my thoughts on the new update. I would say 40 of those 50 games have been with this tactic here. I will be doing a video on it, and you can see in the bottom right, it is a possession game, and I'm happy to say that possession is very effective again. So I was using possession for about a week before 4.4, and you can still play some decent football before the update, but whenever you came up against a high-rated opponent, you would start to struggle. But with this possession tactic, I was playing pretty much all top 300 players on the first day, and I even drew against rank 15, and that's always a good sign. Once I can actually use possession at the very high levels, that's when I start enjoying eFootball. But just to talk about the changes, I think the two main reasons possession is now really effective is because you can actually play passes a lot better. I have adjusted a few of my player builds to get more passing, and that means when you're using possession, your players, you kind of usually need width, and wingers, you can actually get the ball out to your wingers a lot more often now. And this has resulted in me changing my player build. So I've changed Pirlo and Mateus. I've kept the same, but he now has a different function. So before, this was the build I used on Mateus before the update. You can see his 78 low pass and his 80 loft pass. I never had any complaints about Mateus' passing before the update. In this new update, I do notice that 78 low pass a little bit more. There will be many instances where the pass is still accurate, but because he has lower low pass, he kind of hits the ball weakly and it doesn't reach my teammate. And then for Pirlo, before I had Pirlo, I actually had 0 points into passing, and I would have had more into shooting. So this was his passing stats before, and that was more than enough. If he increased his passing before the update, from here it didn't actually need any improvement. But now Pirlo can actually properly ping the passes, and he's very effective at them. But I do notice that his defensive stats, he's not as good as Mateus anymore. The auto AI defending of Mateus and all the players is still there in the game, but it is toned down a little bit. They're not quite as fast. So I actually have adjusted Pirlo's build to get more defense on him. I haven't had the opportunity to play with that yet, but I definitely noticed more of a difference between Pirlo and Mateus now. And player ID was always something that was very important in PES. Like, each player felt like a kind of realistic emulation of how they performed in game. I wouldn't go as far as to say like that's properly back, but I do notice more difference between someone like Pirlo, who's really good at passing, and Mateus, who's just a box-to-box and able to cover a lot of the pitch a lot more. I've also thrown Kevin De Bruyne into the team. Actually, I'm putting Snyder in at the moment. I was trying him more recently, but someone like Kevin De Bruyne at right mid, his crosses are now amazing. They properly curl, and it's just so fun to be able to use someone like him authentically. Before, when you're using Kevin De Bruyne, it was kind of just like for cosmetic, really. Like, he didn't perform any different, even with higher passing than let's say a Baggio. Like, their passing was the exact same, but now De Bruyne, you can actually see the curl and the whip on the passes, so that's very good to see in this update from Konami. And this clip here is a great example of what happens when you give a player elite tier passing. Pirlo absolutely picks out an amazing pass to Ruby, who puts it in the back of the net. And my opponent was as shocked as I was, so he actually watched the replay alongside me, which I was very interested to see, because just before this update, like, the only way that's going through is if the opponent's defender is in the path to intercept it and they just let it go by. Because Pirlo has really good passing and the defender was a bit blindsided, it's actually able to go through now and you can score a goal from it. But as I said, that glitched interception is still in the game here. You can see in this clip, when my opponent plays the pass, I actually switch into Vieira as well, because I know that's where the pass is going, and it still manages to go by me. It's a bit of a shame that it didn't get fixed entirely, but I think it is mostly a non-issue. Like, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 instances if it happened to me. I can think of a lot more instances of it happening to my opponents, because my opponents don't really switch into their defenders. They don't really manually defend. They rely on the AI. If you do manual defending, you will have less of these interception issues, but you can see it does happen still sometimes, which is a shame. But honestly, I don't think there's too much else to say about passing. In my experience, when the player has low pass stats and the pass gets misplaced, it makes sense. And then the high passing players can play the ambitious passes and have it work. And even if your player has low passing stats, I find most times they still can make the obvious ones. And there will be a few instances, obviously, where a very easy pass is attempted and your player still doesn't reach it. But I think that's always going to be the case. Like, they can never really fully fix that. So I'm pretty happy with where pass it is. I kind of don't want them to touch it, because they usually get things wrong, and I don't want them to mess with it. And also, actually, just this clip here is a good example. It's not just the passes that got better, it's also the way the players take the ball in. So that's very good to see. I know a lot of people are asking me what pass assist settings are the best now. I've stayed on 2 and I've tried a little bit of pass assist 3. I don't want to make any firm recommendations yet because I just need to get comfortable using all the different pass assist types. But 2 feels pretty good to me. There still is the issue where you can't really pass the ball kind of short into space. So if I want to play it up to my striker with a lofted pass, it will still land on his head. I can't kind of play it into the space in front and drag the defenders out. But that's on pass assist 2. Maybe on pass assist 3 it's possible. I'll have to experiment with that and get back onto you. And then also people are asking me about what thresholds for passing. I think if you just get to 90 low pass, you're pretty good. For lofted pass, I think you can keep going higher and higher. But I do notice 90 low pass is more effective than before. And this clip here with Neymar is actually a good example of it. Because he has 90 plus low pass, it kind of gives him a little boost, I guess, on the pass to get past the defender and allow your striker to get in on goal. But if you don't agree with me, I understand why, and I think it's because we're at the point now where we're using 104 rated players, and it just messes with the balance of the game. Defenders are still pretty strong. It causes a confused game environment, I'd say, where some players are free-to-play teams and their stats are around the 90s, whereas I'm someone with Maldini who has 95 in nearly every defensive stat. Vieira is pretty much the same, and then Tomiyasu is like very well rounded too with 90 speed, and I think this is what's causing some people to have issues with the game. Like the free-flowing football that we used to play a couple of years ago in eFootball 22 and 23, I think those days are behind us. We are closer to them now than we were in the update before 4.4, but completely free-flowing football. I think with the monetization and the need for Konami to sell newer cards, and then people feel the need to buy these cards, I think it's always going to end up in a scenario where confusing things happen on the pitch. I put up a poll on my channel the other day where 53% of people said the update was kind of alright, 31% said they loved it, and 11% think it's worse than before. So that's definitely a very respectable kind of response to this new update. But I think a lot of those people that are in the it's alright camp would be into the I love it camp if we actually had realistic stats and we didn't have these super juice steroid players running around on the pitch at 100 miles per hour. And this results in 5 at the back. Park the bus tactics still being pretty effective, definitely less effective than before, but I still think they're too strong. And it's because like if you have a juice team, you can just sit in and defend very easily. I think the 5 at the back park the bus tactics with a free to play team isn't as effective as before, but with a god squad it's still like 85% of the way it was before. But they can't really fix that if they're going to be selling cards like that, because you can't have the Maldini with these crazy defensive stats. And then if you put them in a park the bus formation, like you can't have them not defend effectively, or else if you do that and make it so even with this Maldini, if you park the bus, you're still going to give up goals unless you're really switched on. If you kind of make those changes, it means when you play normal football and normal games, there's going to be too many passes that Maldini should intercept and he won't be able to. So I think this is the corner Konami have backed themselves into in a very successful financial or monetization method. But we as a player base just need to accept that that's what we have and this is the card we've been dealt. And if you don't like that, like honestly, I'm just saying you should just take a step away from the game. Like it's not gonna get much better than this, I don't think. Like I'm already hearing people complain that it's too hard to defend. It really is. It's pretty easy to defend now. If you know what you're doing, it's still pretty easy. I'm already hearing people saying it's hard to defend. Like they're not gonna make defending harder and more manual from here, I don't think. This is probably as manual as it's gonna get. And again, I don't even think AI defending is extremely strong. It's just that when the cards are this high rated, of course they're gonna be able to automatically defend better. If you play with a free-to-play team, you probably are struggling to defend, but that's what Konami want. They want you to have to invest in these players, and it's a very big investment they require. They're gonna have to invest to be on a even playing field. Now they could increase the responsiveness of dribbling to how they had it before, but then you're going to have the problem of Haaland being able to run like R9, so they can't really get it balanced right when the stats are this crazy. Just a few other points. I think finishing is more inconsistent, particularly when you play against Czech, not this Czech but the newer Czech. He saves those low shots that used to be like pretty much guaranteed goals a lot more, but I am noticing that you can hit the shots into the near post a lot more. So if you're struggling with finishing, try that out a little bit. I don't like this change. I think near post goals should be pretty hard to score and should only really be scored when your opponent uses manual keeping to cover the far post, and that means the near post opens up. In my eyes, when you're 1-on-1 with the keeper, it should be a pretty much always aim into the far corner, and then your opponent also knows this. If they're confident that you're not going to be responsive to cancel your shot or you know, pick the near post, they'll move across, and then you can capitalize that on that as the attacker and shoot into the near post. So that's not a great change in my opinion, but again, I think that's just the newer keepers that are really high rated that are facing that issue. I think if you use a free to play keeper, you're still able to score into the bottom corner very easily. But let me know your thoughts, because I think Konami have fundamentally made a good game here in version 4.4, but it's just being held back a little bit by these super high rated cards.